Things just took another turn as we have a brand new report that has dropped as it pertains to Mitch Marner and his future in Toronto. And while multiple reports are surfacing, something strange is going on with the situation. We're going to break down the latest report as well as discuss some new updates and some new comments from Brad Treliving surrounding the situation, which gives a lot of insight on his future in Toronto from both the player's perspective and the front office perspective. We're going to break down all these reports on this episode. Before we get to it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. About 71% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. You guys have been absolute beasts, so thank you guys for that. We are on the road to 25,000 subscribers and the big goal of 30,000. There's a lot to go over today, and we had a video yesterday on a report that came out, and a bunch of different reports were surfacing regarding a sign and trade with Vegas. That was the most recent report, I believe it was from Frank Saravalli, and then from there, some new reports have dropped, some comments from Brad Treliving have came out, and it took another turn, the situation has, and it's a very interesting one. And let's start with, of course, Frank Saravalli, and then I have another report I'll dive into, and then, of course, some comments from Brad Treliving. So Saravalli came out recently and said the Anaheim Ducks are a team to keep an eye on for Mitch Marner, along with the Vegas Golden Knights. Anaheim could offer Marner more privacy and is reportedly willing to spend big. And again, we covered this in yesterday's video, how the Golden Knights are the best fit and will explore a sign and trade. But then later on in the night following that report, Darren Dreger came out and said the Mitch Marner camp is not overly motivated to do a sign and trade to get an 8th year on the contract and is happy to go to July 1st. So following what this report was from Frank Saravalli, also mentions the Anaheim Ducks, which is a very interesting turn of events here. Things have taken a bit of a convoluted turn here where we're seeing a bunch of different reports come out, a bunch of different things, and Brad Treliving spoke out today. And we'll dive into some more of those comments. But regarding this new report here, some interesting information as well as linking a new team. But according to Dreger, he's saying no sign and trade. Frank Saravalli is saying that a sign and trade is very much so on the table.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of options still on the table, including staying with the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? He's still technically a Toronto Maple Leaf. I don't think it's going to happen. We're going to get into Brad Treliving's comments in a second, too. I really don't think he's staying a Toronto Maple Leaf. I think he is moving. I think he's going to go somewhere else on July 1st. And I don't think it's going to be a sign and trade either. I think it's an interesting idea for that extra year, for that 8th year. We talked about that in a video yesterday. But the fact that Anaheim's coming out now, and they're maybe not a front runner, but in the forefront of things, tells me a lot about Mitch Marner. If he leaves and he doesn't go to a contender or a team that's in the middle of the pack, if he goes to a team like Anaheim, it is certainly all about the money, I think, and he wants as much money as possible. And not that it was never about winning and that he didn't care about winning, but that would certainly tell me personally a lot about the player if he ends up signing in Anaheim specifically. Again, they're not the front runner or anything like that, but they're going to be a team that is going to be open to spending a lot of money this year in free agency. So, and obviously would want a player like that because that would, speed up their rebuild process a little bit. And they have a lot of really good young players. So that would tell me a lot, but anything can still happen. Although I don't think he's going to stay at Toronto Maple Leaf, and we'll get into Brad Treliving's comments in a second too.
Yeah, and let us know below if you think, and I know there was a lot of questions about why they would do a sign and trade. It is obviously for salary cap reasons and mainly the 8th year there. And according to Darren Dreger, who usually is a mouthpiece for Darren Ferris and Mitch Marner's camp, that might not be on the table, whereas Frank Saravalli is hearing that it is. So depending on who's using what leverage here, it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens. But for now, again, the recent update, the Ducks are a new team linked, but as well as Darren Dreger, no sign and trade, at least according to him, on the horizon necessarily right now. But again, that could change. It could all just be negotiation tactics. And of course, Brad Treliving spoke out today. And again, we covered a little bit earlier, but some other comments have come out. We're in the process right now regarding Mitch Marner and his future. Mitch and I had a discussion during the exit meetings, and my message was, let's take a step back and breathe a little and meet as a staff. And Mitch has a say in this as well. And of course, he said you had to prepare for every potential outcome. That's what we're in the process of doing right now. So by the way that, Brad Treliving was speaking and the way that these different reports are coming out, a lot of people are, and a lot of even writers and analysts for the Leafs are saying these comments, it's the first time that they've heard this in their time covering the team, as blunt as they are surrounding specifically the internal evaluation that's going, underway. Them saying they won't formally agree to a contract offer at this point, but also the main thing, which we covered earlier a little bit, is the DNA comment and how the Leafs need to change the DNA here. You pair all these new reports with Brad Treliving's comments, all these different things. You mentioned it. I think the Leafs are still on the table for sure. I just don't necessarily believe myself that they're going to be one of the finalists even.
Yeah, there's three things that stood out to me over the last couple of days and maybe the last couple of weeks since the Leafs have been eliminated. The first thing is obviously the DNA comment today from Brad Treliving, and I think that's very interesting because he didn't necessarily say that there is a change in personnel coming, but there's changes coming. But he didn't necessarily say that there isn't changes in terms of personnel coming, right? So I think that, there is going to be some change. So that stood out to me. The other two things are not what both of them said, but what both of them did not say over the course of the last couple of weeks in this whole process. And Brad Treliving didn't once hear him say, we would love to have Mitch Marner back. We absolutely want to offer him a contract, and he's a big part of this team, and we want him back. Didn't say that. He said that he thinks he's a star and he's a great player, and that much is true, and that's what we've been saying. But not once did he say, we want him back, and we're going to try our best to sign him. Mitch Marner also didn't say, I want to be back and I want to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. They've both just been saying, we'll see what happens. And again, they're probably in negotiations or we'll see what happens because obviously Brad Treliving kept saying we'll see. And, after the exit interview, he said, take a step back, really consider things and we'll see where we are. To me, that's not a good sign. If you leave a conversation like that, that means, you're probably in a very bad place in terms of wanting to stay, right? So those are the things that stood out the most to me over the last couple of weeks and today through Brad Treliving's press conference because it sounds like there's changes coming. Brad Treliving never said that they want Mitch Marner to return. They want him on the team. And Mitch Marner never said, I love it in Toronto. I want to stay in Toronto. So, and he was talking in the past tense for the majority of his exit interview as well. So that's what stands out to me. I don't think he's returning.
Yeah, now there's obviously the interesting factor of last year. Most of us thought the same thing about how he wasn't going to return, but this year's a bit different. Again, some of the comments were, I think Mitch is a tremendous player. I think he's a star. I had a meeting with him, had a discussion, and it's emotional right now. I'm going to be in touch with Mitch's representatives and determine what's best. He's got to say in the process as well, which again, we all kind of know that, but there's times where, sometimes we forget. Not necessarily, everybody, but Mitch Marner has the want to return to Toronto. And based on everything we've heard, the interactions with some of the fans, the jerseys being thrown, which is all rightfully so, I'm not exactly confident that he wants to return to Toronto. And you pair that with all the reports that are dropping. And also, you mentioned it, and they said it, I think one of the reporters said it, Mitch has made no clear desire or comment publicly to return. He hasn't even said much beyond he loved his time in Toronto, all like you mentioned in the past tense. And Brad Treliving was asked directly about it, and he said the generic stuff where he's a tremendous player, all these different things. There was no point where he said, even Craig Berube's comment was more direct than Brad Treliving's. Craig Berube was, I love the player, I would love to have him back. Brad Treliving didn't say that. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't even commit to, obviously, and you're not going to in a press conference like this, commit to having Mitch Marner and John Tavares back. But he was asked about evaluating options, and he said, prepare for every outcome. And ultimately, I think the outcome here is going to be Mitch Marner leaving, and he said, and he tempered some of the expectations for re-signing Mitch Marner. He's got a say in the matter, and just reminding people that at the end of the day, it's going to be Mitch Marner who has the final say rather than, Brad Treliving. And as much as Brad Treliving may want him back, which I'm not entirely sure based on the DNA comments is true, it's going to be up to him at the end of the day. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be up to Mitch Marner, right? Does he want to return? If he doesn't want to return, it doesn't even matter if the team wants him back. But I think as an organization, like Brad Treliving was talking about, it's probably time to go in a different direction, do some different things because you keep getting the same results. And one thing I thought was interesting, and I want to kind of compare it to wrestling in a way that in wrestling, a lot of the executives talk about how the reaction online is very different from what actually happens in the building. And they usually give the fans what they want based on what the reaction is in the building, because those are the real reactions. What's online sometimes is not necessarily what everyone thinks, right? And with the Leafs, the majority of the reaction online was very negative to Mitch Marner, that, he didn't show up in these moments. And we saw it in the building in Game 7, the same reaction, right? So I think they're going to act on that at this point. They are going to go in a different direction. And again, it really stood out to me that Mitch Marner was talking in the past tense, never said he wanted to return, and Brad Treliving never alluded to the fact that we would like to have this player back. We're definitely offering him a contract. He just said, you know what, we'll see. And it doesn't sound like Mitch Marner's in a place where he wants to return.
Yeah, fans aren't happy with him, and I think most people have had enough of the experiment, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending if you like Mitch Marner, he is the odd man out at this point with the contract being expired. But let us know down below what your thoughts are. Keep you up to date with everything Leafs related. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.